So I think we can go ahead and get started. So my name is Jennifer. I'm currently living in Oregon. We just moved here a few months ago. I'm an independent education consultant, and I've graduated from Cornell, and I've been doing interviews for Cornell for a while, for many years. And then I also worked as an engineer for about 12 years. I have three kids of my own. They're all pretty small. They're all like middle school and under. But I've worked with lots of different high school students doing all kinds of different things. So I'm really excited to kind of share my experience with you and also answer any questions you might have. So I lived in New York, like upstate New York, for a long time, and I was also at the school. I was in the school board there, so I also understand um, just like how schools work, like public school. I did go to school in the US. I went to school from third grade through college. I was born in China, and then I came to US when I was 9. So that's kind of like my background. So it's a little bit about me. Okay. See people coming in. Yeah, so as I'm just going to repeat real quick for the people who came in. This webinar is recorded, but we're not going to be publishing anybody's names. I'm going to be editing out people's names and questions. So feel free to ask any questions, okay? All right, cool. Yeah, so have you ever felt like this? So first you think like, oh, there's still a lot of time, and then all of a sudden, oh no, I have no time. So this webinar is all about kind of like the timeline between 9th through 11th and also 12th grade. So like kind of 9th through 11th, but 12th grade is sort of like, I say 12th grade is sort of the extra year almost, because you're doing most of the work like 9 through 11, right? So we'll go through the timeline to kind of give you an idea of what should be done at certain times, but don't feel bad. Like if you're already in 11th grade, for example, and you're like, oh no, I didn't do this when I was in 9th grade, or oh no, I didn't do this when I was in 10th grade. Do not feel bad, okay? Because there's always like different things you can do, and not everything is required, right? There are definitely certain deadlines that you want to hit for applications for sure, but I would think that for most of us, we're not anywhere near those deadlines, okay? So like the actual application deadlines for colleges aren't going to be until fall. So do not worry, do not stress. Like this is not a webinar that is meant to like make you stressful. This it's meant to help you sort of like figure out what those kind of big milestones are and then plan ahead. All right, so let's go to the next one. It's not going. Okay, there we go. All right, so have you asked yourself this question before? Like, why do you even want to go to college? You can go ahead and like pop it in the chat too. Like, why do you want to go to college? Like, is there actual reason? Is it just because parents say like you must go to college? um, I mean, for me, I don't think that actually everybody needs to go to college. It's not everybody is meant to go to college, right? I mean, there's lots of different people in the world, lots of different careers. That some careers doesn't actually need college. However, a lot of jobs do need college, and I think there's also a lot of reasons, even if it's not specifically for a career. For me personally, I think obviously, learning new things is a great reason to go, right? And you can certainly learn like different subjects that wouldn't be there for high school, for example. You can make a lot of friends and a lot of cool friends. I have made a lot of friends in college who I still keep in touch with, and it's good networking. So even if you wanted to start a business or something, it's a great place to meet all kinds of different people from different backgrounds. Um, you can find yourself basically, right? Figure out what you want to do. I would be very surprised if high school students come to me and say, I know exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life, right? I don't think most people are like that. If you're like that, that's great. Kudos to you. That's awesome. But not everybody is like that. Most people are not like that. So even in college, a lot of people don't realize what they want to do. Like it takes them time to figure out what they want. So college is a great time to figure that out. Try a lot of different things. Try classes, try activities, try internships, all those kinds of things. Independence, I just put that here because obviously I would think for a lot of high school students, like you want to be independent, like you don't want to live with your parents for the rest of your life, right? And just let somebody else in. Okay. And that's not only just like being able to like do your laundry or whatever, right? That kind of like cooking. It's also just financial independence, right? You want to be able to go to college, find a career, be able to make money to like have an apartment, whatever it is. And then to be able to serve the community. So I think when you go to college, you get to open up your perspectives to see what is actually necessary and what can be your purpose, right, in this world, and what you can do to help people and to make the world better, right? It sounds kind of corny, but that's what it is, for every job, no matter what job you are doing, um or if you're starting a business or a nonprofit, whatever it is, the goal is to serve somebody, right? If you don't have anybody to serve, then there's no purpose for that. So college is a great time for doing that. Okay, let's just go ahead. And then what about what is the right kind of college? How do you figure out what's the right college for you? Um, there's a lot of things, like basically the three C's: culture, community, curriculum, and conclusion. Conclusion is basically where do the graduates of this college goes? Because different colleges have different outcomes, right? There's some colleges that just really train for people to work right away. And then there's other colleges that really prepare people for graduate school. So those are all things that you can look at to see if this college is right for you. I'm not going to go too much into detail because I want to go into the timeline area, but this is kind of just background for you to think about, like, why am I even doing this, right? Like, why does this take so much effort, so much time to figure out, how to like look good on the application, but the whole point is not to like get into whatever like ranking college, but the point is to find the right college that's for you and that you're gonna like and you're gonna have a good time and it's gonna get you the outcome that you want. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so then let's look at what our college is actually looking for. I kind of organize this in sort of like a pyramid. So the bottom is what we call like the foundation. So these are all the things that you really need. If you don't have these things, it's really hard. So you can't just like only have the top things. Like you can't just have like a great essay and great extracurriculars, but like your GPA is really bad, right? That doesn't work so really well. You have to have, good enough grades, like good enough courses, your scores. And when I say good enough, it's like it's really specifically targeting for the colleges that you're looking at. And you can find out those things by looking at the college website or by looking at a lot of just internet resources. You will know like what are they looking for in terms of GPA, courses, like test scores, whatever it is. So we're not saying that yet they have to be perfect. We're not saying they have to be, at whatever crazy high level. It's just whatever level that matches like the colleges that you're trying to apply for. Okay. And then the next level would be, okay, so let's say we have those foundations. Like let's say we have those GPA, like, courses, the test scores, like those are all good. Then on top of it, then what's going to help you stand out is recommendation letters, extracurriculars, and then also some colleges will consider interview. And then on top of that, right, then you can have your essay, which is kind of the crown jewel of your application, right? Is really where they get to know you. And then there's those things called like the hooks, if you will, like silver or gold. We'll go into that a little bit. But last thing here is like the demonstrated interest. Is I put it on the bottom just because it's an easy thing to do. Demonstrated interest is really just like getting onto the college, whatever college you're interested in, like getting onto their email list, going to visit them. That may not necessarily be easy to visit them, especially if it's far away, but at least like attending a virtual information session. Those are all things that you can do to make sure that the colleges know you're actually interested. These matter more for colleges that are smaller, like private colleges. They don't matter as much for larger colleges, like public state universities. Just So FYI. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next one. So if I'm going too fast, feel free to just type in the chat and just say, hey, back up or have a question about this, okay? I'm just trying to stay within our time so we have enough time for questions at the end. Okay, so we talk about hooks. You may have heard this before, like a gold hook or a golden hook is like some of these things that just you either have them or you don't, right? Like whether you're a celebrity or like have huge donations, we're talking, a building, something like that, really, really huge donations. Most of us are probably not in this category, but I just wanted to put this in here just to kind of like, so, just for your information, because there are people who are like this, and then, this definitely helps. And then go to the next one. So the silver hook is a little bit more reachable, I would say. Like there are certain people that may be around you that maybe who have some of these. And again, like it's not something that you have to have, but if you have any of these things, it definitely helps. So any like national level awards, like people getting recruited for sports, if you create a nonprofit, a company, but I mean, all these things in here, though, I wouldn't say that you have to have, right? I'd say that like if you're gonna do it anyway, then do it, but don't do it only because you want to go to college, right? Or only because you want to go to a specific college. I don't think that would be the right approach to it. But this is just kind of like, so they do look at this kind of stuff. Is that if you have a major award, or like maybe you're from like Wyoming or like Montana, geographic location, like that is actually something that they do look for, to try to get diversity in their applicant pool or in their student body. So that's just something to be aware of. But again, I wouldn't try to do any of this stuff only for college and not because you're interested. Like only do it if you really want to do it, okay? And then how do we actually stand out? So I think that's the last thing before we get to the timeline. And this applies specifically more to the essay. So it's something to think about, like is to remember is like the 5 I's, right? The identity, ideas, inspiration, interest, and intellect. So you want to showcase who you are. You want to show how you're a unique person. Ideas, like how do you think about things? How do you problem solve, right? How do you like come up with like new ideas? And then inspiration, like who has inspired you? What has inspired you? Like what different events or like world events have inspired you? Like those are the things that tell the admission officers like who you are and what motivates you. And then interest, like what are you curious about? What are the things that you like to do? Like how do you spend your time? Because they know that you're a full person, right? They want to know kind of like what you want to do and what you like to do, not only just your test scores and your grades, because they want their college campus to be an interesting place to be. And they know that people who are interested in things, are passionate about things, then those are the people who are more likely to succeed. And then obviously, last one, like intellect, you don't have to really talk too much about like, oh, like I'm really smart or anything like that, because your grades will reflect it, right? But I think what we're talking about here is more about like how do you solve problems, and not necessarily a math problem, right? It could be an interpersonal problem. What are your study habits? Like what habits or what processes do you use to be a better student? So these are going to be really unique to every single person, but these are just like some frameworks, like a framework, a way for you to understand, like thinking about the essay, like how to be yourself. And I know that's really hard to say. It's like a really cliche to say, just like use your own voice or be yourself, but it really is like they really do want to just know who you are. And it's really hard to get to know somebody just over the page, which is why some colleges also do the interviews. But the whole point is that they want to attract students who are going to do well at their college. They don't want to be attracting people, they don't want to accept people who are going to go to their college and then hate it, and then leave. They want people who are actually a good fit for their school. So, okay. All right, so we're going to get into the timeline area now. So ninth grader. So if you're a ninth grader, you could also just like raise your hand in the chat or something. How many ninth graders do we have? Ninth grade, I think, is really just adjusting to high school, discovering your strengths and weaknesses, trying out some different classes, try out some different clubs. I'm sure some of you may have already done clubs in middle school, which is great. But if not, this is a great time to just try some different clubs, and you don't necessarily have to commit to each club, but it's great to just try it and then see if you like it. Explore academic interests. So this is a year that you can just like take some different classes. I know you don't have a lot of choice, right? Everybody has to take English, math, history, whatever, right? But there are some choices. There will be more choices compared to middle school that you can take some different classes that may interest you. So that will be all really good. If you haven't started volunteering yet, this will be a good time to just get out in the community, try some different things. It could be very simple things like just working at a food bank or a community garden, or just like something really easy. I will say like start with a volunteering thing that if you haven't done it at all before, start with something that is just like a one-time thing, and just try it. You don't have to necessarily sign up for like many weeks at a time, right? Because I don't think you necessarily need to commit to everything. So I really think the theme of ninth grade is just exploration and self-discovery and just finding out what you like. Same thing with career, right? Do a job shadow, and then starting a scholarship search. A lot of scholarships you can actually apply for starting when you're in ninth grade. You may not necessarily be thinking about it at this point, but if you have some time, especially on school breaks or summer, get some help from your parents, that you can actually start doing some of that. And even if you get like a small scholarship, it's fine. Like, why not? Take it as free money. And then scholarship is also a good opportunity to actually practice applying to things, right? Just like figure out like how to actually apply to something. And writing, because a lot of the scholarships out there, like they require an essay. Not all of them, some of them do. Some of them is only a short one. So it's a good chance to try out some writing and try out some writing that is not standard, like the type of school writing that you might be used to. And then the summer after ninth grade is a good time to kind of do some of the same things right here. But there are some pre-college programs that you might want to consider. I think it's a good idea to try some out if you can. Not all the colleges will have a pre-college for ninth grade. A lot of the pre-colleges start at 10th grade summer. So there will be a limited number of choices, but there are some choices. So if you feel like you're interested to try out like what it would be like to spend some time in a college campus, this is a good time. Of course, you don't have to do this. You can definitely wait until 10th grade or even 11th grade. It's totally fine to do that. But if you have the time, if you have like financial, a lot of times like this, you do have to pay for it, which is, can be expensive. So if it's possible, I would do recommend it. There are some that are cheaper than others. So, we can look at some choices. And then volunteering again, summer is a great time. Job shadowing is really good. I can't stress it enough. Job shadowing. I have a YouTube video that actually talks about job shadowing. So if you're interested in it, you can go to my YouTube channel and watch that. But it's really simple. All you have to do is like ask somebody, and then you go work with them for one day, and then see how you feel. It could be a dentist, it could be a lawyer, it could be an engineer. It could be like a teacher, it could be artist, like anybody that would be able to like just take you and you just go to work with them for one day. You don't actually have to do anything. You basically just are there to observe, and you may feel like I really like this or I really don't like this. So that would all be good information for you going forward. And then pre-studying for next year, I think is a good idea. I don't know, for everybody is different, but if you're going to be taking some challenging classes in 10th grade, studying a little bit before, and not necessarily like doing a lot of work, but at least just like looking at the textbook, looking at some of like what the words mean, looking at some of the terms, looking at like the curriculum or the schedule. You might not have a lot of this stuff, but I'm sure if you wanted to ask your teacher, they would be happy to share some of the stuff and say, hey, I would like to pre-study something, you know. I think they would give you some stuff. um and then you'd also think about like what are some subjects that you really struggle in. If you know, like for example, you're really bad at writing, right? Or you know, like math is really hard for you, right? Those would be good subjects to try to like strengthen a little bit more over the summer. Or on the other hand, it could be subjects that you're really good at. You know, maybe you're really good at coding, or maybe you're really good at history, you know, like doing more of what you like is also a great way to approach it. I wouldn't do too much though, but those are just things, some things for you to think about. Is that either you could like use that time to strengthen more like some areas that need help, or you can just like really dive deep and do some more extra things in the areas that you do like, and that would be really cool too. So okay, let's look at a little bit. Let's just talk a little bit to take a little break and talk a little bit about extracurriculars, because we did talk about how ninth grade is a time where we're starting to do some clubs, but like, why are we even doing them? Like, why do colleges even care? Is it just like having another thing on the application? You see this cartoon here is like this girl is just walking this lady across the road and say, oh yeah, you know, she has another thing that she can add to the application, right? It's really not about how many things you do. It's really more about the quality of the things you do, and what you're taking away from it. What are you learning from it? Um, Clubs are a great way to figure out what you like. You can see different perspectives, like see the world, like see different how different people view the world. And I think when I was putting see the world here, one potential thing you could do is like some kind of like an international exchange program. There's a lot of really good exchange programs out there. Some of them cost money, some of them don't cost any money. You can use this opportunity to help others, expand on your interests, or like explore a career direction, right? There's probably tons of clubs in your high school that you can look at. Um, or there's also like different activities outside of the high school, right? There are other things that are in the community that you can look at as well. And I really recommend doing some of both. I don't just only do extracurriculars like inside your school, because you want to be able to figure out like who are you like in the context of your town or your city. Okay. So any questions about ninth grade? Maybe just like take a pause there. Anybody have ninth grade questions or anything we talked about so far? Take a minute. No. Okay. All right. Well, feel free to put any questions in the chat. Okay, so we'll go on to 10th grade. So 10th grade, so right now, you know, second year, sophomore, you know a little bit more about the school, but you're still kind of like not an upperclassman, right? You're still underclassman. Um, this will be a good time to figure out, and if not, like maybe even in ninth grade, but you know, if you didn't really do it in ninth grade, 10th grade will be a really good time to tweak your curriculum. So you should have a plan for your 4 years in college, or not college, 4 years in high school, right? You should have a plan for like which classes you're going to be taking each year, because some classes do have prerequisites. So the beginning of 10th grade, you really kind of want to figure that out if you haven't done so already. And then this will be a good time to sort of curate your extracurriculars, because you can't do everything. Ninth grade is fine, you know, for doing a lot of different things and exploring. But I think 10th grade, maybe you have a better idea what you like, and then you can kind of focus in a little on only the ones that you do really enjoy. and they don't all have to be in the same like area. For example, if you want to be like into medical, like if you really like medical, your clubs don't all have to be medical, but you do want to kind of like trim it down in terms of like your personal interests, right? You don't want to be too busy because like you're starting to get busy in 10th grade. And then if you haven't done so already, 10th grade will be a good time to visit some colleges. Start with the ones that are close to home, and then maybe drive, an hour or two. So, if you have the means, definitely go a little bit farther, but I don't think you have to start going to like far away colleges really until like 11th grade or even later. But just starting some college visits like near you would kind of give you an idea. What does a college campus look like? What are they looking for? What is the process? And that would be a good experience. And then if you are doing sports and you want to be recruited for sports, 10th grade will be a good time to start thinking about that, because that's when a lot of coaches are doing scouting. That doesn't apply to everybody. So if it doesn't apply to you, then don't worry about it. And then cultivating teacher and counselor relationships. This is really important because you do need teacher recommendation letters and a counselor recommendation letter. Like almost, I think every single college will require a counselor letter. So if you do not know your counselor, or you don't have a good relationship with your counselor, then 10th grade will be a good time to start. If you are already in 11th grade and you still don't know who your counselor is, definitely make a meeting with them and talk to them. Usually counselors have a lot of students, like 100, like 100 or more students. So if you don't make a meeting, sometimes they don't have time to really meet you. So that would be a good thing to do. And then teachers, you may not necessarily be getting recommendation letters from a 10th grade teacher. However, learning how to communicate with your teacher is a good skill to have, because you probably will be getting a teacher letter from your 11th grade teacher or 12th grade teacher. So like kind of practicing like in 9th and 10th grade to figure out how to have meaningful, like positive communication with your teacher, that would be really good. And then we talked about job shadowing, externships as well. Externship is just a little bit longer compared to a job shadow. Job shadow is usually like 1 day, but externships can be up to a week or even more. So, if you're really interested in a certain career area and after doing one job shadow, then you really like it or you're really interested or just have more questions that you want to explore, then you can think about doing an externship. Usually they're obviously like not paid, but it's usually like a longer form of a job shadow. And then for parents, or if the students are here, you can remind your parents in your 10th grade year, this is when they should be looking at their financial planning. Because for colleges, like they will be looking at your financial situation 2 years before, like 2 years before the year that you apply for college, right? So in your 10th grade year, they will be looking at like tax forms and things like that. So students may not necessarily need to worry about it, but this will be a good time for parents to just evaluate their financial situation and just maximize any potential for financial aid. And then the summer after 10th grade, like similar to 9th grade, there's lots more pre-college programs available at this point, more so than 9th grade. So definitely I will look at something. Um, Internship or job would be great. Like I personally did summer job when I was in high school, and I really thought that was a good experience and made me like a lot less shy and a lot able to talk to people. Internship is also great too. It might be hard for high school students to find internship, but it doesn't mean you can't try, right? There's lots and lots of different opportunities, whether it's like in person or there are some internships that are virtual as well. Just depends on what field you're interested in. And then if you haven't done so yet, the summer of 10th grade would be a good time to do a diagnostic test for SAT or ACT. I do recommend doing a diagnostic for both tests because they are very different. Every student is different. So some students really do better on the SAT, some do better on the ACT. So if you haven't done any diagnostics, I would definitely do both of them just to see where you are. And you may find that one or the other you like better. So don't start like just prepping for SAT. I think a lot of people just automatically prep for SAT, not even having tried the ACT. So you might actually find that one test might be easier for you than the other, and then you choose which test is actually more suitable for you. So that way you just make it more efficient, right? And then summer, you can pursue summer interests like competitions. There's more competitions. Like there's like art things, there's writing things, there's like poetry things, and some of those competitions do come with money, which is nice. So like scholarships, but they're also nice too because those are also things that you can put on your application. But I don't think that's really the only reason to do it. I think again, kind of similar to the that we would apply for scholarships in ninth grade is that when we're doing those competitions, we're actually like forcing ourselves to do some extra work, right? To like write some essays, or like if you're into art, if you're into photography, whatever it is, to actually do more of that. That helps you kind of prepare for what you're going to be doing in the college application, or like even in the future. For example, if you're going to be an art major, you have to have a portfolio for art. So, if you're doing some competitions, then you're going to be preparing some pieces for those competitions, and then those pieces would go into your portfolio. So even if you didn't win anything in the competition, it's still a good opportunity to just get some of that work done. So it's kind of an excuse to just do something. And then reading is always really good. I definitely recommend summer reading for anybody, any grade, really, because like summer is a great time to improve our reading skills. And the better you are at reading, the better you're going to be at writing. So I do have a list of books for high school students, just kind of like standard, like classic books. So if you would like a list of books, let me know and I can send that list to you. But I think you can read anything. Like it really can be magazines, it can be novels, it could be, like websites, just find good quality reading. And I think like what is good quality reading. And if you don't know, ask a teacher or ask a librarian. Find some good quality reading. I think that would be really beneficial. And then special projects, a lot of people talk about like a passion project. I don't know if I really like that word, because I feel like the word passion is very way overused. But if you really are into something and you want to do a project, I think 10th grade is a good time to get started, because if you're doing it in 11th grade, it's almost like a little bit late, because in 11th grade, you already are going to be writing your college application essay. You might be doing some other kind of pre-college, 11th grade summer is pretty busy. So if you're going to be doing a special project, 10th grade is a great time to do it. And then you have a whole year of 10th grade, I'm sorry, like a whole year of 11th grade if you want to refine it or make it better. So you just give yourself a little bit more time if you get started in 10th grade. And then you could also start it in 9th grade if you really know what you want to do. But I think a lot of students, they don't really know what they want to do until they're in 10th grade. So that's why I kind of put it here. All right, so any questions on 10th grade? Let's take a little breather. Questions so far? No questions? Okay, everybody's doing good? All right. Okay, so just briefly talk about teacher recommendation letters. I did talk through this a little bit already, so I won't go into too much detail. But typically, you do need 2 teacher recommendation letters, and they're typically from like 10th to a 12th grade. Some schools will accept another outside letter or even more, like whether from a coach or from like a club advisor, somebody like that. I would ask your teachers early. Like I would do that probably like the second semester of 11th grade. You'll see that in the timeline. And I would help your teachers by just providing a list of activities, resume, and just like stories or like any ideas that you want the teacher to write for you, because the teacher is going to be writing for a lot of people. So whatever you can do to kind of help them is good. You don't necessarily want to say like, hey, you know, Mrs. blah blah or Mr. blah blah, like I want you to write about me, like specifically these things. They may not necessarily do that, but I think you can have a conversation and tell the teacher what is your career goal, like what is your college goals, like what do you want to do, like why do you want to go to college, what do you want to study. And then you could even say like, what are the things that you really enjoyed about his or her class, or what did you take away from his or her class that you think is going to help you in the future. You know, like those are all things that would be good to have a conversation. I would definitely schedule a time to talk to your teacher, and not just like say, hey, can you please write a recommendation letter, here's my resume, and that's it. You know, I would ask first, like, would you want to write one for me? And if they say yes, then make an appointment, talk to them one on one, even if it's like 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that would help a lot because most students don't do that. Okay, all right, so we're going to 11th grade now. So 11th grade is kind of the critical year. I did split it into half, the fall semester and the spring semester. Typically, students have the heaviest workload, so this is going to be the most busy year. Some of you who are in 11th grade, I don't know if you would testify to that, if you think that the 11th grade is the busiest that you've ever been, that's typically true. So fall, you know, we still want to focus on academics. I think it's very easy to kind of get distracted by whether it's like sports or clubs or leadership, you know, different things. But we have to remember, you know, if you go to college, the point is actually still to study. So your grades actually really matter still in 11th grade, especially more so in 11th grade, because even if you had some grades that are not so great in 9th and 10th grade, your grades are really good in 11th grade. That really shows that you had grown, that you like matured, right? So having good grades in 11th grade is really good. Is much preferred, right? Than if your grades were like super good in 9th and 10th grade, but all of a sudden like 11th grade it just like dropped, right? So even if it was people with the same average GPA, I would like to see the 11th grade grades higher and 9th and 10th grades lower, right? Even if the average is the same. Pursuing leadership opportunities. So this is the area where it's like kind of depends on the person, and it kind of depends on what you're interested in. But whatever you're interested in, I think there are opportunities for leadership, right? And leadership doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be the president of some club. It doesn't have to be like a title. It does have to be something that's meaningful to you, and it does or it should be where something where you actually are taking a risk and you're doing something that is like inspiring other people to follow. So a definition of a good leader is a person who has people who are willing to follow them, right? If you're a leader who just tells people what to do but they don't want to do it, then you're only a leader in the title but you're not an actual leader, right? So no matter what you're doing, like whether it's, you know, tutoring or whether it's, you know, like a club or volunteering, whatever it is, I think there are opportunities to do something a little bit out of the box, a little bit new, where you could like work on teamwork and like organization skills to try to like organize something that is a little bit different than how it's been done in the past, and then inspire other people to go with you. So without kind of going into too much detail on like a specific, I think that is like the definition of leadership that I see, is that, you know, really that like taking a risk and learning from that experience of like how to be a good leader. 11th grade typically you will have the PSAT test in the fall. That is like a national thing. Some schools will offer it for 10th grade as a practice, but most schools will offer it for real, like for the actual official score for at 11th grade in the fall. So, I mean, it's not like a super duper special thing, like it's not that important, but it does qualify you for the national merit finalist, like the national merit scholarship. So like if that's something that's really important to you, then just make sure that you do have that on your calendar, so it doesn't sneak up on you. You can do some practice for it, you can do some prep for it, but my opinion would be that like you want to really use time to study for SAT and ACT, and even if your PSAT isn't great, it's not the end of the world, right? Colleges really do look at SAT and ACT rather than the PSAT. So not to say that if you did really well in PSAT, that's great, but I just don't want students to be stressed out about PSAT. If you do great, that's awesome. If you don't do great, then don't worry about it. I think you still have a lot of time to practice and prepare for the SATs. Okay. In the spring, we already talked about teacher recommendations. And then if you haven't done so already, the spring of 11th grade would be a great time to take your SAT or ACT for the first time if you haven't done so already. And then I would recommend doing it again sometime in the summer, like August would be a good time to do it again. I would usually recommend taking it twice, one time in the spring, one time in the fall, or 3 times, up to 3 times. I wouldn't take it more than 3 times. Okay, 2 or 3 times is probably good. You're not gonna do better by taking it the 4th time usually, and you're just gonna waste a lot of time and waste a lot of energy. And then in the spring, you can start thinking about essays. You can start thinking about what your colleges are, like list of colleges that you're interested in. And then what are those requirements? Like, do they have the supplemental essays? Like some colleges will have small essay in addition to the big essay. And the next slide will talk a little bit about that. But somebody earlier asked about EA, the difference between early decision, early action, and regular. So we'll just go ahead and talk about that now because we have that on the slide. So regular decision is kind of the basic one, right? It's like it's just regular. That's the best way to say it, is that there's nothing special about it. Basically, there's a deadline. Usually the regular decision deadline is like sometime in like December. So earliest is probably December. Sometimes it's like January, some are February, some are even March or later. So basically you apply and then you get your results in the middle of March or the end of March. EA, like early action, is you apply early. So typically like the earliest one, I think UNC, like is like October 15. So it's really early. So you apply before October 15. And then some of them are like November 1st. So basically you apply early and then you find out sometime like middle of December, sometimes it's like January or February, depending on the school. So you do find out a bit earlier rather than finding out in March, you're finding out like between December and February. So it's nice, you get to know a little bit early, and then you also don't need to actually go there, right? You just know that you got in early, but it doesn't mean that you're bound by it. You don't have to go there. So early decision is different because you apply early. Usually the deadline is November 1st, and then you have to go there if they accept you. So that's kind of like, you have to be really sure that you really want to go to this college. And then I do also want to warn students too that like you don't really have a choice in terms of financial aid, right? Like for example, if you apply to like 10 colleges and then you got accepted to 5 colleges, and then you can compare those 5 colleges, which college is going to give you the best financial aid package? Are they going to give you grants? Are they going to give you scholarships, right? But if you do early decision, you're basically like stuck with that one college. You could be very happy with that college, but they're just going to give you whatever financial aid that they think they're going to give you, and you're not going to really have a choice in the sense that like you can't say, no, that's not enough, I'm going to go to a different school, right? So that's just something to be aware of. So regular decision, early action, you find out early, you don't have to go. Early decision, you do find out early. Typically December 15 is when you find out. You find out early, but you do have to go if they accept you. So so kind of have to strategize a little bit in terms of like which colleges are you going to apply for regular, which colleges are you going to apply for early action. And you don't have to apply to any colleges for early decision. I do recommend, like, for students who like are have financial constraints, to not apply for early decision, because financially that's a big risk as well, because like, what if they accept you but you're not getting the amount of aid that you really need? That's not really like a good plan. Okay, so we talk about that, and we can come back to that if people have follow-up questions on that. I think I do have a slide on that later as well, but I just wanted to briefly talk about that since we're here. But 11th grade, that would be a good time to really think about like the summer of 11th grade, to think about like which colleges am I going to apply for, which way how am I going to apply? Like, I'm going to do EA, which colleges am I going to do RD, right? Finalizing that strategy so you know which essays you need to write and when you need to write them. Writing those essays, taking the SAT a second time, doing doing a program. If you didn't do any pre-college programs in 9th or 10th grade, 11th grade would be a good time to do it if you have the time and you have the means to do it. Or do a special project. This is okay. If you didn't do anything in 10th grade, this could be a good time to do something, right? All right, and when I say special project, it doesn't have to be like a research project. It doesn't have to be like building something. It could actually just be like a like whatever you're interested in that's maybe semi-related to your career, or it could just be like a community service thing. So the definition of project it can be very wide. It does not have to be like a physical thing. Okay. All right, so let's look at the application essay real quick. So there is just one big application essay, which is the Common App. There's also the Coalition app, but basically they have the same prompts. And 650 words. There's like 7, I believe, like different prompts. Usually they're the same every year, but in the summer they will come out with the updated one and just say, okay, this is the official one for this year. So you can pick one out of those 7 and then write about that. UCs, like, they have 8 prompts and you can choose 4 out of the 8, but they're shorter. And a lot of schools will have supplemental essays as well. I would recommend like letting your teacher or somebody else read it, because it's kind of important. And I know a lot of students sometimes, like, they feel like embarrassed, like they don't want other people to read their essay, but I think you do get a lot of good feedback. You don't have to take all the feedback. Getting feedback is nice, because you then have a choice, like, do you agree with this feedback or not? If you don't agree with it, you don't have to change anything. But sometimes you'll hear something from a teacher or a counselor and they'll say like, oh, what about this? And then you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that, like, I didn't think of it that way. Or if it's just like a wording thing, sometimes it's a small thing, sometimes it could be a big thing. So I would definitely recommend having somebody read it in the summer or like early fall, so you have time to fix it. And then just, I was putting there, use your unique voice. I know nowadays that you can do a lot with ChatGPT, you can do a lot. And like, I've sort of experimented some with it as well. But it is really important that, like, if we're using any kind of software like that, it's still, I'm not saying like you can't use it at all. But I think there are ways to use it that is like using it as a tool and not like just relying on it. So maybe we should do another webinar just on how to use ChatGPT, but I think there's a fine line between like relying on like a software to do it for you and actually using your own voice to write something. So it is really important that it comes from you, because believe it or not, um, it's pretty clear. Like it is pretty easy to tell if an essay was not written by a student. And I read a lot of them where I'm just like, oh yeah, like the student definitely did not write this essay. It's really, really obvious. So, you know, I would just advise against like being tempted to like use anything that is really not yours. Okay. All right. And then, yeah, we talked a little bit about this, so I won't go into too much more detail in terms of the application strategy, but there is a slight advantage in applying early decision. So you'll see like in the blue bars, these are the admission rates for early decision for the class of 2026 compared to the regular decision that is the red bars. You know, some of these are actually sports recruits, so it kind of throws the scale a little bit. But if you are really super loving one school and you're okay with the money, early decision might be a really good thing to try. And hey, you know, even if you don't get it, it's okay. Um, but it might be worthwhile doing it if you really love that school and you know you're gonna love it. Like if they do accept you. And then some schools do offer early decision too, which can be confusing because there's the early decision one, which is November 1st deadline. And then, so for example, if you didn't get in, if you got rejected from early decision one, you cannot apply again. Okay, so not about like applying again to the same school. This is saying like, for example, like this the second school, you can pick a different school and early decision that school like in the second round, and usually that deadline is like January 1st or around there. So you could do another early decision if you wanted to. So that's kind of like a new thing, just started a few years ago. So you kind of have two chances to do early decision. Not every school has early decision, and not every school has early decision one and two. So those are just some special some specific cases that just want to mention here, that there is an opportunity potentially to do two early decision schools. And then there's this thing called restrictive early action, which some prestigious schools have. I think Stanford has it. I think a couple other schools might have it as well. Basically, it means that you can basically like if you apply, they accept you. You don't have to go, so it's not an early decision thing. But you're not allowed to apply to any other school early action that are private. So you can still apply to early action schools that are public schools, but you cannot apply to early action schools that are private schools other than that one school. Does that make sense? So it's like if you were to apply to Stanford restrictive early action, then you cannot also apply to another private college that is just like a regular early action. Um, but you can apply to like a state school, like UC, you know. Well, UC actually doesn't have early action, so that's a bad example. But if you were to apply to, for example, UNC or like Michigan, right? Early action, that's okay because those are state schools. So it's really confusing. So if anybody has any specific questions, we can certainly go into the details about that. But the last thing I'll mention here is in terms of strategy is actually picking the major. So you may have heard that some majors are harder to get into than others. So, you know, picking the major it can affect like the admission rate. So if you pick a major that is like super popular, that might be really hard to get into because everybody is applying to that major. But then, you know, some schools, like especially some of the public schools, they do have restrictions on their majors. So like if you got into their school, but you wanted to switch into like computer science or like electrical engineering or something like that, then you have to have already been in like admitted through that major in order to get in. You can't just like transfer in. most schools, most private colleges will allow you to change majors, but some public colleges do have like a quota for certain majors. So if you didn't get in through that major, you can't actually transfer in. So those are just some considerations to think about. So you probably don't want to pick a major that is like super popular because they're super competitive. But at the same time, if that is the major that you want and that's the thing you know you want to do, and it's a school that is a school that has a quota on majors, then you do kind of have to apply for that major because you don't want to go to that school if it's not that major, right? So anyways, those are just some things to consider. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, we didn't talk about 12th grade and we're already sort of out of time. We're at 6 o'clock. We'll just quickly go through 12th grade because 12th grade really does go by quickly. It goes by in a blink of an eye, that I find. So you're basically submitting everything in the fall, and then you're submitting your FAFSA, your CSS, you're writing your resume, you're preparing for interviews. Interviews usually happen for early decision in like late, what I want to say, middle to late November or like early December. But for regular decision, interviews are happening like in January, February. Okay, so that's kind of the timeline. And then in the spring, you can actually still apply to more schools. There are some schools that have deadlines that are a bit later. So if you're done with sort of your early stuff and some of your regular decision stuff, and you're like, okay, I just want to have some more schools just in case, you can apply to some more schools. And then you will start to get those letters from schools about decisions in March, middle of March to late March. And then you will also find out if you were waitlisted. So if you're on the wait list, it just means that if the school has more spots, then they will give you a spot. And then you can still send in, depends on the school. Some schools will let you send in additional materials, grades, updates, awards, letters, whatever it is, to try to get you higher on the wait list. And then you will need to reply to the college by May 1st to let them know if you're going to go or not. And even if you got waitlisted, you still need to basically commit to a school that where you actually just completely accepted you, because you just don't know if you're going to get into the waitlist, right? So you do need to pick a school before May 1st, and then you just wait, right? Because after May 1st, between like May 1st and May 10th is when schools will get back to you and let you know if you got a spot on the wait list. So that's pretty much the whole schedule. Kind of went through 12th grade really quick, but I'll just leave you with this thought. So, the most important thing is not which college you end up going to, but it's actually how you utilize the resources at that college. Every college is unique. There's 4,000 schools, 4,000 colleges in the US. The top like 100 to 300 are all really good. So in every school has something that they're really good at. So um, don't be discouraged if you don't get into your dream school, but like go to whatever school you are in. It really matters how hard you work at that school, and utilizing like all the different things that they have to offer, because you're going to be paying a lot of money. Maybe you get a scholarship, that's great, but spending a lot of time, like paying a lot of money going to college. So just try to be happy at the college that you're going to be at, and use those resources, and have a good time, learn a lot, come out like a really more like independent, more happy, more capable person. That's more important than being like, oh, I wish I went to a different college, right? So I will end it here. Yeah.